Hey everyone. Please support what I do to help keep Greyhawk alive by subscribing to the channel. Also, please consider becoming a channel member to get early access to videos, exclusive live chats, quarterly adventure modules, and more. Thanks, and enjoy the show.
If you're new to the World of Greyhawk, you've just been introduced to it, I'm going to tell you what you need to know about it today on Greyhawk Ragnar. I've been playing in the World of Greyhawk since it was first published in 1980, and obviously I have a whole channel about it. So I thought I'd share some of my love for the setting with newcomers who might just be discovering it for whatever reason. Um, as I say, it was first published in 1980 in this little folio thing here. It came with two maps, the maps that look just like the one behind me there, except mine's bigger, and a little booklet. This was Gary Gygax's campaign. Gary Gygax, obviously, the co-inventor of Dungeons and Dragons, and he had a campaign early on in the early '70s, and as he was inventing the game, it was eventually published by TSR in 1980, and the published version is very different from his home game version, although he later started to use the published version instead. Um, but in terms of the setting itself, it's set in a part of a planet called Orth, and the continent is called the Flanness. It's sort of like a fantasy Europe, but it's not a complete um, comparison. There's not a one to one. Oh, here's fantasy France, here's fantasy England. It's very much of a kitchen sink type of campaign, although it's relatively low magic. There are some areas and some individuals that are really high magic. So you'll have, most of the time, you'll have kind of a low magic feel to things. But when you go into certain areas like the dungeons of Castle Greyhawk, you're going to find all kinds of crazy magic and high level wizards and stuff like that. But it differs from other published campaign settings in that you don't really have demigods walking around and 20th, 30th level wizards giving missions to the player characters and so forth. So it's got that kind of a feel. But one of the biggest things about it, in my opinion, one of the best things about it, is that there's a balance to it. It's very much there's very much of a pendulum between good and evil. And when it was first published, it was in a state of tension. It was neutral, and evil was kind of on the rise, but you could really see how good could stop it and be on the rise itself. And then later on, it was they advanced the setting a little bit, and that was the Greyhawk Wars and From the Ashes box sets. They'd just gone through a whole series of conflicts and so forth. And the campaign was very much, kind of they flipped the board and uh, uh, changed a lot of things around. And evil was very much on the ascendance. And then later on, they did that again. They advanced the timeline a little more with a book called The Adventure Begins, and they kind of swung the pendulum back the other way. So now it's more neutral, where there's balance between good and evil. And that's one of the most important things in my mind thematically about Greyhawk, is that you do have that balance between good and evil, and you have characters in the campaign who are actively looking for balance. They don't want good or evil to be in ascendance, so they actively try to knock down one or the other, depending on which one is up or down. Which from a role playing standpoint, from a game standpoint, is great because there's always ways to have conflict and so forth. So this is the Flanness. I'm using the original 1980 map just because I like it and I think it's very colorful and very cool looking. But right here in the middle, let me see if I can do this. Right here in the middle is the city of Greyhawk. This is where most of the action in Gary's campaign took place. It is only a few miles away from Castle Greyhawk, which is a huge, sprawling mega dungeon where most of the adventures in Gary's campaign took place, on a day-to-day basis. But there's a lot more to the campaign setting than just that. There is over here. This is the Fron Hills. This is where the famous Temple of Elemental Evil was. Over here, we've got Ayuz. Ayuz is a an evil demigod who rules a section of the Flness, which gets bigger as the campaign goes on. Eventually, he ends up owning like that, all that. Um, and he is one of the major protagonists in the campaign setting. He's always scheming. He's always trying to conquer the world and so forth. So he makes a very good villain. Um, Down here, we've got the kingdom of Furiondi and neighboring state of Voluna, which are both very good nations that are opposed to Ayuz and try to thwart his ambitions. We've also got over here the Great Kingdom. Uh, at the beginning of the campaign, when it was published, the Great Kingdom covered a large swath of territory here. Um, but in those Greyhawk Wars that I mentioned, it was fragmented into a number of different smaller nations, and ended up being just sort of a law, not quite lawless, but a really great place where adventurers can go and find things to do. They're opposed by the kingdom of Nyrond over here, and also all these states down here in the bottom. These are called the Iron League. And they're an alliance of good aligned nations who are trying to fight for their freedom against the Great Kingdom and its South Province. Um, Over here, we've got the Kingdom of Kaoland, which is another good kingdom. Its big problem, and the problem of its allies to the west, are the giants. The giants live here in these mountains, and they're constantly raiding into all these neighboring states. So Kaoland, sometimes takes a role there, and sometimes the giants win, and then the adventurers have to go in and free the nations and so forth. So there's a lot going on here, and obviously this is the highest level thumbnail. There's a lot more detail of various things, but just to give you that broadest sense of what's going on. Another place of interest, though, is the Wild Coast right here. This is a collection of small towns that, as the name implies, they have no unity. It's very much a place for bandits and brigands and adventurers and so forth. So it's always a an interesting place to visit for adventure. There are a bunch of deities that have been created for the campaign setting. Um, they are split into a number of different pantheons because there's a number of different human um, races in the setting that they kind of impact how the history has gone and so forth. So there are the Sul people, there are the Iridian people, there are the Flanae people, there are the Baklunish people. There's a number of different ethnicities is the right word for in Greyhawk, and they each have their own respective pantheons. So you'll have deities like Istus or Olamadara or Hextor and Hyronius, who are brothers that hate each other, two gods of war, one evil, one good. There's Saint Cuthbert of the Cudgel. There's Foltus of the Blinding Light. There's a very rich tapestry of deities and religions in the World of Greyhawk, which makes things adds a lot of flavor to things and can drive a lot of conflicts. And it should also be noted that just because two deities are both good aligned doesn't mean they get along very well. So, for example, Foltus and Saint Cuthbert really don't get along because they both think they are the one true way, which I love those little asides into stuff like that. I'm in fact doing a series of videos on the deities of the World of Greyhawk, and you'll just look for one of the playlists and you'll find it. Greyhawk is, of course, home to many of the uh, most legendary characters that have ever been in Dungeons and Dragons. You have characters like Mordenkainen and Tensor, whose spells show up in the player's handbook. You've got Sir Robilar and so forth. These were actually people's player characters. These were characters in the original campaign that kind of got moved into the game itself, which I always thought was a wonderful thing. And it gives a lot of a lot of texture to the game because they're very different individuals. They're not, as I say, they're not supermen. They're still adventurers, but obviously they're going to be more powerful because they're older and they're higher level. But they're not at like demigod status like you would see in other places. And I love that. I love that there's lots of different characters that go around, but it's also not overwhelming, right? There's not that much lore in Greyhawk that you can't get a handle on it all. There's it's been around for going on for little over 40 years. So yeah, there's a lot there, but it's not this ginormous mountain of novels and modules and adventures and box sets that you have to kind of get into your head. It's much more manageable, which is one of the things I really love about it. And in terms of adventures, a lot of the most classic adventures, like the Tomb of Horrors and White Plume Mountain and the Vault of the Drow, as some people call it, and the Giants modules, they all got their start here in Greyhawk. So it's very much of a birthplace of some of the greatest adventures that you've ever seen. Greyhawk Ruins, although the version that was published wasn't Gary's version of the castle, it's still a wonderful adventure and a nice hub, an umbrella for a tent pole for a campaign. And of course, the city of Greyhawk itself is a wonderful thing. They did a box set of that back in the '90s, and it's a wonderfully Lonkmarian kind of place to set up shop for if you're an adventurer. But the Greyhawk has no shortage of classic adventure locations, and as we've seen, it's rife with plenty of places where conflicts are going on, where you can have brand new adventures today. So there we are. That's a very, very high level view of the World of Greyhawk. I hope this has been helpful for you. I'm making more videos for beginners, so please do check those out too. There'll be a playlist, and I'll try to put the link in the description below. Welcome to Greyhawk, and I hope you have as many years of fun with it as I have.
Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.